All right, we are live. Give me 1 second. I have a good video. Oh my goodness. So I'm a little baffled, and I'll tell you this. I just learned a lot about economics today, and one of my favorite economics guys that I really love, his name is Paul Krugman. So uh, it's kind of like the hard truth, right? It's like the hard truth of when we print money and we borrow money, and there was an article last night on TV, and it was entitled um, it was entitled, God, what was it called? Oh, it was talking about how when a government prints money and when it borrows money into oblivion, it's not sustainable. And the reason it was talking about that is because there is a community in the United States, I firmly believe, and there is a community here uh, that borrows and takes money when they need it. And it's been happening for a long time, and I really think that people just aren't aware of it. The biggest problem here is that there is a limit to the amount of BS, and this is where I'm caring a little bit. There isn't a limit to the amount of BS that you can take, right? I'm not saying I'm going to crack or anything. I'm just saying, okay, let me care, and what's happening in my life right now, and this is my story. So as a person that understands economics and a political science major, right now there's a economist. His name is Paul Krugman. He worked for Obama. He didn't like Obama, so he quit, and he's actually a liberal. It's really funny how that works. It's because Obama went conservative at the end. However, he did pass a health care bill that's ultimately failed. And it tried to change the healthcare system into something that was more like Switzerland. So I'm giving you all some wisdom right now. So what Switzerland does is they have these open markets for insurance. So if I need health insurance, I make a lot of money, I call, or I register online, I call, and what these insurance companies do is they create a market, and they compete against each other. And they compete against each other, and they lower the healthcare costs. And that's what I believe Obama was trying to do, and it didn't work here. So that's kind of the failing of the healthcare system. On the other side, I was talking about Paul Krugman. So Paul Krugman goes, okay, how are we going to pay for all this? What is the consequence of borrowing money and printing $14 trillion? Well, it increases inflation. It increases craziness, that's for sure, and it makes our lives more difficult, because then we have to find a way to make sure we have a sustainable future for all of us. If you choose to go down that route, right? However, if you want to have kids, if you want to have a family, and you want them to be able to go out and get a job, you have to be able to also supply those things to them as a family. And you have to set them up for success to some extent. You can't depend on the government to do it all for you. You can't depend on who else to do it all for you, anybody else. So the biggest thing that I was seeing is that Paul Krugman is now rationalizing how we treat this printing of money. So in order to prevent hysteria, he says that this printing of money, you can't look at it as a way, as a means of how, or as a way, how do I explain this and make it simpler than he did? You can't explain it as a way that the nation owes a debt. You have to explain it as, but it really is. At the end of the day, it really is. He's just trying to kind of sugarcoat it. And what he's saying is, when we print money, it's not the nation owing a debt. What it is us owing a debt to ourselves. So he's basically saying we asked for this. We asked for this. This is and the consequence is we owe it back to ourselves. So it's a good way of looking at printing money. So I'll explain it that way. And that's what he's saying. He's got a really good book called Arguing with Zombies. Zombies meaning, let's be honest, racists. People that are dead inside, still have no ethics, think that the Constitution is the Bible, and that they should just go out and buy a gun, an AR-15, right? And say we're allowed to. The Constitution allows us to, so we're just going to do it. And we're just going to blow our money to prove a point. The Constitution's real, and we're going to go down that path, and we're just proving our point. It's fucking ridiculous. But here's the biggest problem. The biggest problem is that the Republicans have generalized a way to be a man. I firmly believe this. And the biggest problem is that now these idiots are now proving that they're being men by going and they're buying. It's a gender war. They're going and it all started in California in the women's movement, and I firmly believe that. When we argued for equality, right? Equality as a people, and then what ended up happening is the women said, we don't want equality, we're women. We're going to fight for that. And it's actually an article, it's actually a new movie on Netflix. I forget the name of the movement, but it's insane. I firmly believe we're in a gender war again. And this is why we argued for equality back in the day. So basically what Paul Krugman is saying is that we owe this debt. We owe this debt back to ourselves as a nation. $14 trillion. And you know, it's just really crazy to think of it that way. We owe this debt back to us as a nation. Because printing $14 trillion has consequences beyond what we know. All right, but there is a consequence. A nation is unsustainable when the only way forward is printing money and borrowing money. Printing money, borrowing money. You can't do it. On the plus side of things, there is a way out. It's called working. Now, the problem is if you've got to take care of your body, because right now what the president has asked for, choose to follow him or not, is basically asking us for us to work our way out of this, and it's ridiculous. It's just insane. It's a nightmare. It's a total nightmare. Especially if you're a public servant, you worked really hard to avoid this. Keep in mind, Bernie Sanders, what Bernie Sanders says. This is worse than the Great Depression. And why is this worse? Why is this worse than the Great Depression? Well, because we print more money. We have a conservative leader who was worse than Herbert Hoover. We fought our way out of 2 world wars to get out of this in the 20s and the 60s. And right now what's happened is you have a president. This is what is really important for you to hear. You have a president that's taking away your civil rights and your civil liberties, holding up a Bible and saying this is the law of the land, and he's saying this is the way forward now. It's just really crazy. So it's nuts. It's insanity, and this country has been the definition of insanity as a means of rebelling for the past 60 years. Who knows why? It's called hate. And I'll tell you this, a country that goes forward through hate, it's intolerable. It creates an intolerable situation where black men are getting killed in the streets, where white men are being brutalized in the mountains and killed here in Albuquerque, and where it's literally a retarded way forward. I mean, it is a retarded way of growth. So how do you fight it? You read, you educate yourself, and you don't rebel against it. You stop doing what you want all the time, and you have to really rethink the paradigm. You have to rethink things. So The national debt is something we owe ourselves. It doesn't make a nation poorer. Okay, that's Paul Krugman's way of looking at it, and he's right to an extent, because he still wants to see the world as an open market, right, where free trade exists, where we're not a weak country, we don't have a weak economy, where people are still able to be employed as long as they have a body and as long as they're not dying. The biggest problem here is that we've had 3 epidemics here in 12 years. So the amount that a person can take and a population can take is really limited. What you're left with is a choice to either live or to die, right? To survive. And unfortunately, for those type of people, it's that type of reality. So Paul Krugman, if it's an intrinsic part of your survival right now, because I firmly believe that's important if you're still alive, inside if you still have a pulse, and I believe that you do. He wrote a book. It's called Arguing with Zombies. So it's battling your way forward through what I believe is ignorance, it's incompetence, and the people that make your lives harder because they're just dumb. I have to read the book still, but it is called Arguing with Zombies. So it gives you some life advice on the reality you face, arguing with the morons that think right now they should go buy an AR-15, do whatever the fuck they want, do whatever the hell they want, and that's how they uphold civil liberties. That's not how you uphold civil liberties. You don't go buy a gun and say, "Oh, this is my right." If you believe that somebody else was taking your guns away from you, well, you have to break down the argument, and that's a whole nother video. Post in the link below if you can, if YouTube hasn't censored me for whatever reason, and I really hope that our Constitution comes back in a way where we're not ostensibly or showing or saying, this is now our reality. Let's go buy a gun, let's go hop in a pickup truck, and let's go help protect a store. But I will say this, if you want a future, and that's the way to do it, if you believe you should do that, it's a little crazy. That's all I'll say. It's a little crazy. It doesn't make you more of a man, it makes you less of a man. And if the reality is that's our way forward, we're fucked. We're screwed. We're totally fucked. And yeah. So Paul Krugman, Arguing with Zombies, economic advisor, says when we print this much money, don't freak out. He's saying it's a debt we owe ourselves. What does that mean? It means in the future we're going to have to pay it back somehow, right? And how do you do that? Well, eventually you just keep it really cheap. And you redefine the dollar. Or you find new ways to value currency. And you realize that our timing has not been so good when it comes to the economy and a general way of approaching nation building. And that's all I have to say today. Paul Krugman, it's called Arguing with Zombies. Check it out. Black Lives Matter all the way. All lives matter all the way. Police brutality needs to end. And if you see things in terms of color, you are racist. If you think that this is just a black issue, you are the racist. If you think that this isn't affecting white people, brown people everywhere, and they haven't faced discrimination because of this, that makes you racist. So keep that in mind. All right, have a good day, and check out Paul Krugman. And also keep in mind, he stepped down from Obama's cabinet. So he stepped down from Obama's cabinet because he said he disagreed with the way that Obama was leading. And he said his economic plan is not working. It's not a good one. Okay? Have an open mind. Keep that in mind. Think for yourself. Do your research. Check the facts before you explode. And yes, it should be easier right now than it is out there. and I will talk to you soon.